Yeah.
What's going on, NBA fanatics? This is your friendly neighborhood Memphis Grizzlies homer, Memphis X, and I talk hoops. Yes, I am back, fresh off vacation. Time to get this off-season review started. But first, every hero needs their theme music.
KeyAno. Grizz gang, go hard. Baddest in the game, we be on one. I talk hoops, so secure. All up on the court, but we gon' score. Memphis bringing heat straight from Tennessee. Demarest back and let's go.
All right, Grizz fans. Although I took some time off making videos, I still kept up with Grizz news, especially with the fans and how the fans have felt about the offseason. And if you saw my videos, you know, there was a certain level of expectations for this offseason. I guess amongst the average fan, the Grizzlies finished last season as the second best team in the NBA, the second best team in the Western Conference, and they have a reasonable thought that without a Ja Morant injury, they could have made the NBA Finals. This is reasonable. Now, going into this offseason, I honestly did not expect Kyle Anderson or Tyus Jones to return. I expected them to make some kind of big trade for a significant contributor, using their cap space to either move up in the draft and get a significant contributor, such as an elite talent like Zaire Williams from last year, or to get a veteran and take on a bad contract. You know, those were my expectations for this offseason. To get somebody who is rotation worthy, a player that can make the top 8 of the rotation for the Memphis Grizzlies, the top 8 of the playoff rotation for the Memphis Grizzlies. And this was with, you know, me thinking that DeAnthony Melton was going to be returning. So the first inflection point of the offseason, of course, is the NBA draft, the 2022 draft. And everybody was telling me that the Grizzlies were not going to draft 2 players in the first round, blah, blah, blah. And y'all know during the draft process, my contention was always that teams that draft well should draft more. It is the easiest, cheapest way to get talent. It is the easiest way to get guys that will be bought into your system, guys that are not tainted by other organizations, guys that only know your way of doing things. It is the easiest way to do all those things. And for a team like the Memphis Grizzlies that is in a small market, it is probably the most efficient way to get talent, because they're going to really have to overpay in free agency, and to make a significant trade, it's going to cost you assets. And we found out this offseason that the price for elite talents is a very high one. See the Rudy Gobert trade. So what did we get? We did not get our trade up in the draft. Well, we did technically, because we did get a trade up, but we did not get a free agent splash, so to speak. The Grizzlies had an opportunity to be either a salary cap team and have about $20+ million in cap space, or they can act like they were above the cap and have access to the mid-level exception. They decided to have access to the mid-level exception, and they used part of that mid-level exception to sign one of their draft picks that we'll get into later. So those were the expectations. Now, what was the reality of the offseason? This is Memphis X with iTalkHoops. While you're here, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications so you will be alerted to all the new videos I have coming up during this NBA offseason. We have a goal on this channel to get to 1,000 subscribers before the new season starts, and I'm going to need your help to get there. Thank you. Like I said, the first inflection point was the NBA draft, and we were all expecting them to trade up. We were all hoping they would trade up into the top 10 or into the lottery, but that was not meant to be. Even though some lottery picks did change hands, the Grizzlies were not able to make a deal in the lottery and I'm sure it's not for lack of trying. Grizz were able to trade their 22 and 29 pick for the number 19 pick and select Jake LaRavia at number 19. They then traded DeAnthony Melton to the Philadelphia 76ers for the number 23 pick and Danny Green, who will be nursing an injury for most of the season. They traded for the 38th pick and selected Memphis' own Kennedy Chandler. And they drafted at number 47 Vince Williams Jr. and promptly signed him to a two-way. And they used their other two-way contract to sign Kenny Lofton Jr., who was the darling of the Las Vegas Summer League and looks like a real top-notch prospect. I will say that he probably looks like a first-rounder to me. Looks like he should have been drafted in the first round. And I expect him to be getting a fully guaranteed contract. If not this year, definitely next year. So that's what they did during the draft. And I'm not going to say I was excited. You guys heard my draft spiel post-draft. I wasn't excited. There were some other guys like Marjon Beauchamp that I really wanted. But like I said, the Grizzlies front office has given me no reason to doubt their draft efficacy. So I think that it will be hard for me, or I won't be one of those people that come and try to trash their draft, because their track record has been pretty good up so far. And I assume, like I always do, that they know more than me about these prospects. So I'm not going to talk about the Las Vegas performance of the rookies. Those are going to be in different videos. But I'm just going to say, at draft time, these were some reasonable draft picks for me, as far as if you're drafting for role players and not higher upside guys. So after the draft, we have, the trade buzz is coming up. Kevin Durant drops his trade demand right before the free agency period starts. And everybody is in a tizzy because Memphis opens up as the second best odds for trading for Kevin Durant. And that just drove the fan base into a tizzy, even me. But, it's one of those things that is probably not a good fit for the Grizzlies. So those talks have been stalled. Rudy Gobert has been traded to Minnesota. DeJounte Murray was traded to Atlanta. Jalen Brunson went to New York from Dallas, which kind of weakened one of the Grizzlies' rivals in the Southwest Division. Another significant point for this offseason, Zion Williams, the number one pick from the 2019 draft, signed his max extension, and has looked healthy this offseason, which is good. And of course, Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies signed his extension and has been working out. He looks fully recovered from the knee injury he suffered against the Golden State Warriors. Tyus Jones was re-signed to a 2-year deal, about $30 million. Kyle Anderson was unfortunately let go. He went to Minnesota, so we'll probably get to see him maybe again in the playoffs. We might see Minnesota. I'm not hoping for that, but you never know. And sort of delayed in free agency, they got a John Conchar extension done. We've already talked about that. So there was really a Grizzlies emphasis on following their path, following their model that they had set, draft players into their culture, develop those players in their culture, and let the players that are already on the roster play and develop also. Plus, they are using, obviously, the next man up philosophy, especially with John Conchar. His extension showed that they are making a significant investment into him, and that significant investment is usually going to probably pay off on the court. And when I say payoff, I'm not saying in production. I'm saying he is going to get a significant role in the rotation this year. Last year, he was on the fringe of the 10-man rotation, sometimes in, sometimes out. Sometimes he'd play, sometimes he'd get DNPs. So, I expect him to be fully in the rotation this year and fully in the 10-man rotation. I think he's going to be the 9th man in that rotation behind, when they're fully healthy, when Jaren Jackson is fully healthy. So I think he is going to be the 9th man in that rotation. And that leads us to the other significant part of this reality of what happened this offseason, which was Jaren Jackson's injury news, stress fracture that requires surgery in his foot. I think it was right foot that requires surgery. It says he's going to be out 4 to 6 months, and that was at the end of June. So that puts him between either the end of October or the end of December, which is a significant difference since the NBA season starts at the end of October. So he could miss close to 0 games or very few games, or he could miss about 15 to 20 games. So, that's a significant difference. But as we've seen last year, these things seem a lot bigger in the offseason than they are in reality, because when you get down to it, the team usually finds a way, even with one guy out. The key is not to have another injury on top of that to complicate things and make things really bad. So that's where we are. Those are the moves that have been made. That's a quick synopsis of the moves that have been made. And I'm not sure if the Grizzlies are finished. Danny Green's contract cannot be aggregated for, I think, until the middle of August or the beginning of August. And that means that his contract cannot be combined with another contract on the Grizzlies to be traded, for another player until after 30 days of the trade that brought him to Memphis. So, I don't know if the Grizzlies are done. I don't know if they're going to bring in somebody. I would like for them to bring in another rim protector, but, I don't know if they feel that that's going to be necessary for a short term. If they don't bring in another rim protector before the season starts, I'm just going to assume that Jaren Jackson is going to be closer to the 4-month range of his injury and not the 6-month range of his injury. But knowing the Grizzlies, they probably think they can suffer through 15 to 20 games of Jaren being out. And Ja, Bane, Dillon, Steven Adams, Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark, Zaire Williams are enough of a nucleus from that 56-win team, and it should be, to muddle through at least to be 500-ish, even with Jaren Jackson out. Now, I have higher expectations, but that's just me. And the question now remains, we've seen what the Grizzlies have done this offseason. Now we're going to see, did that make them better or worse, or are they the same?
We ain't ducking those folks. Memphis.
So with all that said, we still haven't answered the question, are the Grizzlies better? Are they better? Are they worse? Are they the same? What is the verdict on how or why we should come to that conclusion, or any conclusion, whatever your conclusion may be? Well, honestly, I think the Grizzlies are better. Now, I know this is going to make it sound crazy, but I think the Grizzlies are better, but their record might not be better. Their placement in the league might not be better. They might not be the second best team in the league anymore. The Grizzlies are better, but they might not be the second best team in the West anymore. They might not be, but I'm not counting that out. Now, why do I say this? You have to remember, Ja Morant is 22. Jaren Jackson is 22. Dillon Brooks is just 26. Tyus Jones is just 26. Zaire Williams is just 20. John Conchar is just 26. Brandon Clark is just 25. Desmond Bane is 24. Then you have all the rookies, and you have Santi Aldama, who absolutely contributed nothing last year, who looks like he might be able to take John Conchar's place as that fringe rotation guy in the 10th, 11th, 12th spot in the rotation. And then you have the rookies, who are basically an unknown. Some of them, you don't know what's going to come from the rookies. I'm not going to begin to speculate until I see them actually in the preseason about what they can contribute during a real regular season in the NBA. I will make some speculation when I do their summer league review, but for right now, for this part, as far as the overall of the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm not going to count them as being significant contributors on a team that we hope is competing for the NBA championship. Now, the elephant in the room, of course, is Jaren Jackson's injury. And this is going to have a significant effect on with the Grizzlies' record and their outlook, because to be a contender for the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a young team. It will help them more if they have at least a home game in the first round. Home court advantage in the first round. That means they have to finish top 4 in the West, and at worst, they want to finish in the top 6 in the West. And even if you finish 5 or 6, that's going to give you a tough ass series in the first round. So the hope is to really, I don't really know if there is going to be an easy series in the first round in the Western Conference unless you get lucky with injuries to the other team. So home court advantage is the goal, 1 through 4. And I think the Grizzlies can do that. Why do I think the Grizzlies can do that? Despite Jaren Jackson missing from 5 to 20 games this season. The number one reason, Ja Morant. I think Ja Morant is a true superstar. I think the 2022-2023 season is going to see Ja Morant make another run for the league MVP. He is going to be considered, in my opinion, a universal top 5 player in the league after this season. I think he is poised to have a big season, even bigger than last year. I think he's going to stay healthy, or I hope he does stay healthy. And I think he is going to finish in the top 3 in the MVP vote. And he is going to be my favorite going into the season as the MVP. Why? Because Jaren Jackson's not here, and he's going to take it upon himself to carry this team until Jaren Jackson gets healthy. Now, if you've been watching Ja Morant since his rookie season, you know this is true. And for the people that want to doubt Ja Morant, I don't know what you've been watching, especially as a Grizzlies fan that have watched this young man grow from his rookie season to now. I don't think Ja Morant is going to let the Memphis Grizzlies take a step back. I just don't see that happening as long as the Grizzlies stay reasonably healthy. Now, the other thing is we have Dillon Brooks' contract year. Now, the speculation was Dillon Brooks was going to be trade bait this offseason. You know, he went 0 dark 30 on social media right before the draft, I think. And everybody was speculating that he was going to get moved and the Grizzlies were going to bring in an upgrade. And like I told you in those videos that I did about Dillon Brooks and trading Dillon Brooks, it's going to be hard to find a reasonable upgrade for a price that the Grizzlies are willing to pay and who fits the Grizzlies' timeline and culture. It's a hard fit. So, what is best? The best thing to do is to reform Dillon Brooks. Get him to take better shots, fewer shots, and to be more efficient as a basketball player, especially on offense, and get back to his elite defensive ability, which he seemed to lose last year, as he seemed to be playing a little bit heavier last year than he was the previous year. Also, we have Brandon Clark contract out there. You know, Brandon Clark was in the same draft class as Ja Morant, so he's eligible for an extension. And usually guys that don't get the max extension, usually those extensions usually come closer to the start of the season because, you know, the deadline is the day before the first game of the season is the deadline for rookie extensions. And they usually go up until that last 3 or 4 days before the end because there's no rush. and NBA teams and humans in general usually get things done when the deadline is coming. So I don't know how they feel about Brandon Clark or extending Brandon Clark, and if they prefer to have him unextended going into the season so they will have the ability to trade him. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but, there's only been one non-max contract, I think, given out. Keldon Johnson from that draft class, and he was 4 years, $80 million. So Brandon Clark is definitely not that level of player, but we'll see what the Grizzlies think about him. The other thing that I think that people are forgetting and people did not really notice, especially the times in the games where Ja Morant was injured, Desmond Bane became an elite player, an elite shooter, and a very good scorer. And what I'm saying is this. I think we're looking at Desmond Bane's ascension into becoming a max player. I think that's going to happen. I think Ja Morant and Desmond Bane are going to establish themselves as the best backcourt in the NBA. And combined, they're going to average 50-plus points per game this season. I think Desmond Bane is going to be a borderline all-star this season. Ja Morant will be a surefire. He'll likely get voted into the all-star game again. And Desmond Bane, depending on where the Grizzlies are in the rankings and everybody else who's healthy in the NBA, because the West is going to be a bitch to get into the all-star game this year. Trust and believe that. When we do that video, you're going to see how hard it's going to be to get into the all-star game this year in the Western Conference. It is going to be murderer's row, but that's another video. Desmond Bane is going to be a borderline max contract player. I think he's going to score over 20 points per game, depending on his playing time. And I think with Jaren Jackson out early in the year, they're going to lean a little bit harder on him in playing time, and he is going to respond in kind with good shooting percentages, an expanded role, and a better game. So, also, last but not least, on why I think the Grizzlies are going to be better, Zaire Williams. I think what you saw this summer from Zaire, and when we do his Vegas breakdown or his summer league breakdown video, I'll talk about it more. You saw a young man, a young player getting confidence. And this is a guy that's still not going to have a big role because you still have Ja, Dillon, Bane, and you still have Tyus off the bench to handle the ball. So he's not going to have a heavy workload on him. He is going to be able to slowly build up off of his game of where he left off last season as a 3-and-D guy that sometimes did a little bit with the ball. And I expect that his game will be expanded through the season like it was last season when he was strictly a sit in the corner and take shots guy at the beginning of the season until he expanded his game on through. I think he's going to be a lot more confident as a player. He is going to be a lot more intelligent about where his shots are going to come from in the offense and against certain defenses. And I think he's going to be a little bit better as a defensive player next year. I think he is going to be one of the keys to why the Grizzlies are going to be better next season. Now, so where do I see the Grizzlies in the West? I've told you that I see Ja Morant as an MVP level player. That means I see them finishing in the top 4 in the West without question. And I don't think the West is going to be separated by a lot of games overall. I think the Grizzlies are going to be in the top 4. I think the top 4 teams in the West are going to be separated from 1 to 4 by between 5 to 6 games. I think it's going to be close. And I think it's going to be the key is going to be the team that have the hottest hot streaks, because a lot of teams are going to have their down period because the NBA schedule is the NBA schedule. 82 games. Sometimes the schedule is going to give you losses. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have down periods. You're going to have slumps, team-wide slumps. You're going to have these long road trips. We haven't seen the schedule yet, but I predict the Grizzlies are going to be one of the top 4 teams in the West. I think they're going to be right up there with the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Warriors, and my sleeper team that I told you guys about, the Timberwolves. I think these are going to be the teams that are going to be battling it out in the regular season, along with the Phoenix Suns, who kind of mollywopped everybody last year and are basically bringing back the same team. So you're going to have those 6 teams vying for the top 4 positions in the NBA Western Conference. And I think that's going to be the battle. And I think the Grizzlies are going to come out as one of those teams due to the improvement of their youth and the strength of their still deep team. Now, if they get anything, and I mean anything, out of the rookies or Santi Aldama, you can put it in stone that they're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the West. And one of the top 4 teams in the West is going to be good enough to propel Ja Morant into the MVP race. And that's why I think there has been too much belly aching about the summer or the offseason that the Grizzlies have had. And the folks need to calm down and stop worrying about getting some worn out veteran from another team, and just think about what they have on their team, what they have seen these guys do over the last 2 and 3 seasons as a group. And you're going to watch it again this year. So let me know what you think the Grizzlies are going to do this season, how you felt about this offseason. And do you agree with me that they got a chance to be a better team, even though they might not have a better record than last year? 56 games is a high bar to climb for any team in the NBA. So that borderline elite team status. So do you think the Grizzlies are going to do that again? Or do you think the Grizzlies are going to be a worse team? Do you think the Grizzlies might have a chance to be a play-in team and maybe miss the playoffs? Because, if you're a play-in team, ask the Clippers. Anything can happen in the play-in, baby. The play-in is the wild, wild west, and that's where the Grizzlies will be residing next season. Peace.